I can still recall the exact moment my life cracked open again. It wasn't dramatic to anyone else, just me, sitting in our small kitchen, my laptop glowing pale blue on the table. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against your ears and made your own heartbeat sound like a drum. And then I did it. I clicked confirm. 2 plane tickets. Round trip to Key West. 2 passengers, my son, 8-year-old Mason Green, and me. The click of the mouse might as well have been a gunshot. My hands trembled. My chest felt too tight. Because it wasn't just a vacation. It was a declaration. It's over, Juliet. You're done living like a ghost. 3 years earlier, my husband Ryan Green had been pronounced dead. A freak accident, they told me. A snowmobile, thin ice, a river with a vicious current. His body never recovered. They handed me a death certificate as though it were a receipt, the ink so sharp and final it carved itself into my memory. I still remember standing in this same kitchen, Mason in my arms, when one of Ryan's co-workers, shaking like a leaf, whispered, "He's gone. I'm so sorry." I dropped to my knees. The world shattered into silence and blackness. From that day, I survived for Mason and Mason alone. I sold my wedding ring to keep a roof over our heads. I worked full-time at the bank, grinding through every hour, every second, every heartbeat, because if I ever stopped, the grief would swallow me whole. Mason didn't ask about his father often, but when he did, his words sliced me open. When I bought those tickets, it was more than a trip. It was a promise to myself that I would teach Mason life wasn't only about loss, that I would smile again, that maybe, just maybe, happiness wasn't buried with Ryan. I closed the laptop, exhaled, and for the first time in years, the breath didn't hurt as much. Mason burst in from the living room, his grin so bright it felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. When I told him about the beach, he wrapped his arms around my neck and whispered, "You'll be happier there, right, Mom?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to say yes, sweetheart, absolutely. But all I managed was, maybe, maybe not. But we'll try. There was a time when my life was the kind other people envied. Ryan and I had looked like a magazine spread. The beautiful husband with the easy charisma, the family photos lined neatly on the mantel, the perfect smiles. He was magnetic, the kind of man who could silence a room with a story, who could make you laugh until your ribs hurt. I met him when I was 25, still finding my way. He walked into the bank where I worked, not like a man looking for a loan, but like he owned the place. He asked about mortgages with a sly smile that said he already knew the answers. By the time he left, he had my phone number, and by the end of that year, he had my heart. We married fast. Too fast, some people said. But those early years were intoxicating. Red wine picnics under the stars, long hikes where the world seemed ours alone, spontaneous road trips that ended in laughter and cheap motels. Ryan's career exploded. Venture capital, networking, all the things I didn't fully understand, but knew made him the rising star of his firm. At company dinners, women looked at him and envied me. He always had his arm around me then, as if to say, "She's mine." Then came Mason, our miracle. I thought fatherhood would anchor Ryan, ground him, pull him home, but instead it only sent him farther away. More business trips, more late-night calls, more empty space in our bed. Mason would press his little face to the window, waiting for headlights that never came. I begged Ryan once, tears spilling down my cheeks. "You're missing his childhood." He kissed my hair, whispered promises. "It's just a phase. I'm building something for us." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. Until one day, he simply didn't come back. His phone went dead. His silence was louder than any argument we had ever had. 3 days, I told Mason. Daddy's busy. He'll be home soon. On the 4th, the phone rang. Accident. Thin ice. Body gone. I buried an urn with nothing inside. I buried the life I thought I had. And then I built walls around my heart so high, even my son couldn't climb them. And now, 3 years later, I had tickets to the ocean. The morning of our flight, Mason was up before dawn, racing around the house like it was Christmas. His small blue suitcase clattered against the floor, stuffed with swimsuits, goggles, and far too many toys. His joy was infectious. In the Uber to the airport, he rested his head on my shoulder. "Do you think they'll have popsicles there, Mom?" I smiled through the ache in my chest. "Of course. Mango, cherry, whatever you want." Outside, the city woke. Buses groaned, shopkeepers rolled up shutters, the world moved forward as it always had. This time, I told myself, I'd move with it. At the airport, chaos reigned. Lines snaked endlessly. Announcements boomed overhead. But Mason clung to my hand with a grip that told me he trusted me with his whole world. "Are we going soon?" he asked. "Almost," I whispered. As we reached the gate, I felt something strange. Not sadness, not joy. It was as if my soul was stretching, daring to imagine what life without fear might look like. Mason pressed his nose against the glass. "Look, Mum. From up there you can see the ocean, right?" "Yes," I said softly. "And from up there, sometimes everything looks clearer." Boarding was called. We stepped into the tunnel together. This wasn't just a trip. It was a leap into the unknown. The plane smelled faintly of recycled air, coffee, and the nervous anticipation of strangers. People settled into their seats with books, earbuds, neck pillows. Mason pressed his face against the window, whispering in awe. "We're really doing it, Mom. We're really flying to the ocean." I stroked his hair, trying to let his excitement steady me. This trip was meant to heal, to give him joy, to prove that we could start fresh. But then Mason's expression shifted. His little brow furrowed. His gaze wasn't on the clouds outside anymore. It was fixed on the aisle, 2 rows ahead. He tugged my sleeve, his voice urgent but hushed. "Mum, that's Dad." The world seemed to stop. I forced myself to laugh. "Sweetheart, no. You must be mistaken." But Mason pointed, his hand trembling. "It's him. I know it." I followed his finger. A man sat sideways, talking to a young blonde woman. A wide-brimmed hat shaded his face. Sunglasses hid his eyes. But something about the tilt of his shoulders, the movement of his hands as he spoke, it was too familiar. My stomach knotted. Then the man turned slightly, and the blood drained from my body. There it was, the tiny scar under his jawline. Faint, almost invisible, unless you knew exactly where to look. I had kissed that scar 100 times. Mason whispered again, insistent. "Mum? Seriously, that's Dad." I couldn't breathe. For 3 years I had lived with the story of his death carved into me. For 3 years I had convinced myself he was gone. And now, 2 rows ahead, sat a man who carried every detail of him. I turned toward the window, forcing air into my lungs, willing myself not to look again. But every nerve in my body screamed the same truth. That's him. The flight blurred into fragments. Mason dozed off against my arm. I stared at the back of the seat in front of me, stealing glances when I thought I couldn't bear it anymore. The way his fingers tapped on the armrest, Ryan's exact rhythm, the slight lean of his head when listening. Ryan's habit. My mind whispered desperately, "It's impossible. You buried him. You signed the papers. Grief is twisting you into madness." But a second voice, quiet, merciless, asked, "What if it really is him?" When the plane touched down in Key West, Mason bounced with joy. The air outside was warm, salty, alive with promise. He chatted about sandcastles and seashells while I forced myself to nod and smile. But my mind stayed trapped in the cabin, haunted by a scar beneath a stranger's jaw. At the hotel, the receptionist greeted us with practiced cheer and handed Mason a mint towel that he waved like a flag of victory. Our room had a balcony overlooking the ocean. Mason's gasp of wonder nearly made me forget my fear. "Mum, look, you can see everything from here." For a few hours, I let myself rest. We unpacked, watched dolphins leap on the TV screen, planned tomorrow's sandcastles. For the first time in a long time, I felt almost normal, until the night fell. I stepped out onto the balcony, the sea breeze curling around me. The waves below were steady, endless, almost soothing. I closed my eyes, breathing deep, and then I heard it. Voices. A man's voice, sharp with anger. "Do you ever care about anything that isn't money?" The sound of it sliced through me. My breath caught. A woman answered, her tone heated, defiant. "Don't start with me, Ryan. I told you what I wanted from the beginning, Ryan." My knees nearly buckled. I edged forward, heart pounding, and looked down. There he was. No hat, no sunglasses. Just Ryan. Alive, older, but unmistakably him. His broad back. The way he gestured with his hands when furious. The voice that had once been the safest sound in the world to me. My husband. The man I had mourned, buried, grieved. He was standing one floor below, alive and furious, arguing with another woman. I should have screamed, should have stormed downstairs, dragged him into the light. But I couldn't move. I crouched, trembling, and listened as they fought. "Do you really think bringing me to a cheap hotel makes up for everything?" The woman snapped. "It's a 4-star hotel, Camilla." He shot back, his voice dripping with frustration. Camilla. Her name struck me like ice water. Betrayal seared deeper than grief ever had. I staggered back inside, clapping a hand over my mouth to stifle the sound of my breathing. Mason stirred in his sleep. I rushed to his side, brushing his hair with trembling fingers. "Shh, it's okay, baby. Sleep." But inside me, a storm had erupted. That night I couldn't stay in the room. My body moved before my mind could stop it. I tied my hair back, slipped on sunglasses though the hour was late, and walked down to the hotel bar. The room was nearly empty, bathed in soft golden light. A jazz trio played something slow, melancholic, notes floating like smoke. And there he was. Ryan sat at the bar, bourbon in hand, staring into nothing. He looked older, lined, weary, but still him. I sat 2 seats away, my hands shaking. My voice came out steady. "Tough night?" He turned, startled, then smiled faintly. "You could say that." That voice. My God. "Want to talk about it?" I asked, as though I were just another stranger. He sighed, swirling his drink. "Couple drama. You know how it is. She thinks I'm boring, stuck in the past. Maybe she's right." I pressed my nails into my palm, hiding the way my entire body shook. "She doesn't understand what I've been through," he continued bitterly. "That I've clawed my way out of hell, that I'm trying to start over. Nobody sees the whole picture." He gave a humorless laugh. "Forget it. You don't want to hear my tragedies." "I'm a good listener," I said softly. He rubbed his forehead. 3 years ago, I lost everything. I had to disappear, start from scratch, leave people behind. Disappear. He called it disappearing. I wanted to scream at him, to tear through the lie. It's me, your wife, the woman who buried you, the mother of your son who cried himself to sleep for 3 years. But I stayed silent. Ryan drained his glass and stood. For a moment, he met my eyes, not recognizing me, not truly. Just a kind smile for a stranger. Thanks for listening. You're easier to talk to than most. And then he walked out, leaving me frozen, shattered, trembling over the remnants of his drink. I didn't cry. Not then. But I knew one thing. The truth was no longer buried. It was clawing its way back to the surface. The afternoon should have been the kind you seal in a frame. The sun burned warm but gentle, the breeze salted and clean, and Mason dug in the sand with holy concentration, as if every scoop of his little shovel could build us a brand new life. I sat on a striped towel, knees hugged to my chest, pretending the knot inside me was only nerves and not the weight of a ghost with a heartbeat. A scream split the shoreline. Not the playful shriek of someone meeting a cold wave, but a sound torn from the center of a person. My head snapped up. A young woman had dropped to her knees beside a man crumpled half on his side, half on his face. Her hands shook his shoulder. Her voice broke. Camilla. My skin went cold. The man was Ryan. For the span of a breath, I didn't move. I could have turned away. After all, he was no longer mine. But Mason had stopped digging. He stood very still, his shovel dangling at his side, his eyes wide and frightened. "Mum, is that—" "Stay here," I said, already running. The sand grabbed at my feet. The world narrowed to a single point. When I reached him, I dropped to my knees, pulse thundering. Ryan's breathing was shallow. His wrist was pinned under him at a bad angle. I slid my hands under his shoulder and carefully rolled him onto his back. His face was ashen, lips almost colorless. Training I had taken years ago flared alive inside my muscles like memory from another lifetime. Tilt the chin, clear the airway, protect him from the sun. I tore the towel from my shoulders and covered his face, crouching so my body cast shade. "He's breathing," I murmured, mostly to keep my own panic locked inside my ribs. "It's weak, but it's there." "I called the front desk," Camilla hiccuped. "They're sending someone. I don't know what happened." "Water," I said, "but small sips only when he wakes. And tell them to hurry." She sprinted toward the hotel. I pressed my fingers to Ryan's pulse, counting instinctively, begging it not to stutter. The ocean hissed in and out, steady as a metronome. The beach noise softened to a blur. He groaned. His eyelids trembled. Slowly, like someone surfacing from dark water, he found me. "Juliet." My name on his tongue hit so hard my hands shook. "Yes," I said, and there was iron in my voice I hadn't heard before. "It's me." Guilt flashed across his face, then shock, then something like relief, as if some terrible fantasy had finally admitted it was real. A hotel attendant arrived with a first aid kit and a neon vest, kneeling beside us. We checked Ryan together. No obvious fractures. A bruise rising along the collarbone. The kind of dazed confusion that could be exhaustion or dehydration, or the universe finally catching a liar mid-story. Camilla returned with water and trembling apologies. Ryan pushed himself upright with the attendant's help, still swaying. His gaze never left mine. "Juliet, please," he whispered. "We have to talk." I rose slowly, sand dusting my knees, the world coming back into brutal focus. "Not here," I said. "Tonight. The hotel bar. 10 p.m. He nodded. Not the confident nod he'd once given to rooms full of men with money. A smaller nod, careful, like he was afraid of knocking the moment over and smashing it to pieces. I turned away before the old reflex to help him further could seduce me. Mason was standing where I'd left him, as if his little body had rooted in place. He clutched his shovel like a shield. Was it really him? His voice was thin as paper. I crouched and gathered him close. He was all dirt and sunscreen, and the warm, furious heartbeat of a child trying to be brave. "We'll talk, honey," I said into his hair. "For now, we're going inside." We crossed the beach in a silence that felt louder than the waves. Back in the room, I rinsed the salt and sand from Mason's legs, scrubbed my palms as if the ache in my chest was something I could wash away, and drew the blackout curtains against the aching blue of the afternoon. Mason climbed onto the bed with his tablet, but he didn't press play. He watched me with the serious, unwavering stare of a small judge. "Do you hate him?" he asked. The question landed like a stone in deep water. "I don't know," I said, surprised by my own honesty. "I think I hate what he did. I don't know what I feel about him." He nodded, the kind of solemn nod only children know how to give. "I want him to be sorry," he said. "Like really sorry. Not just sorry, because he got caught." A sound escaped me that might have been a laugh and might have been a sob. "Me too, baby." I tucked him under the cool hotel sheets for a nap he stubbornly insisted he didn't need. He fell asleep inside 5 minutes, a toy car still clutched in his fist, as if he could drive himself out of any danger that came. When the room was finally still, I stepped onto the balcony. The sea had changed colour, deepening to a richer, darker blue as the day leaned toward evening. Boats traced white stitches across the water. Somewhere behind me, ice clicked against glass from another balcony, the quiet soundtrack of people on vacation. In the reflection of the sliding door, I saw a woman I recognized and didn't. Shoulders squared, jaw set, eyes that had learned to hold their ground. I had asked Ryan for a meeting. Part of me wanted to take it back, to barricade the door and the heart behind it. But curiosity is a kind of gravity. Truth, once spotted, drags at you. And there was Mason, asleep in that bed, whose life would tilt one way or the other based on what happened when the clock slid toward night. The hours stretched on elastic legs. I paced, showered, changed again. Chose the plain black dress that made me feel like a sealed envelope. Simple, unadorned, but containing something that mattered. When Mason woke, I told him we'd get hotel pizza and a movie. He asked if I'd be gone long. I told him not long at all, and meant it with a fierceness that surprised me. As twilight soaked the sky, I walked the corridor toward the bar. My heels tapped lightly, a measured heartbeat. The lobby's palms nodded in the air conditioning's soft breeze. Laughter floated from somewhere I couldn't see. The world had the audacity to keep being ordinary. The bar was all amber light and dark wood, a room that encouraged secrets. A lamp glowed at every table like a beacon for confessions. The jazz trio had returned, a piano that sounded like rain on a city window, a bass that pulsed like the ocean, a drummer whose brushes whispered. I took a table near the corner, half in shadow. I didn't have to wait long. He stepped through the doorway without the hat, without the sunglasses, without the armor of a man pretending to be someone else. He looked older in this light, the lines around his eyes carved deeper, a weariness in his shoulders that success alone doesn't give. And still, even then, he was unmistakably Ryan. The man who had made me laugh under star-splashed skies. The man whose voicemail I had listened to on loop the night he didn't come home. He spotted me and stopped. For a breath, he was a man on the edge of a cliff, the wind tearing at him, the ground crumbling. Then he came forward. "Juliet," he said softly, as if the name might break. "Thank you for—" "You have a very short window," I said, folding my hands on the table so he wouldn't see them tremble. "Use it." He sat. The space between us thrummed like a power line. For a suspended heartbeat, we were two people at the beginning of a love story again, the bar a stage set waiting for its cues. Then the years slammed back in, and the truth took its chair beside us. "I didn't die," he began, and a bitter laugh trembled at the edge of his voice. "You know that part." "What I don't know," I said, "could fill an ocean." He reached for the glass of water the server had left and didn't drink. "I was in trouble," he said. "The kind that doesn't send letters. I thought disappearing would keep you safe. Keep Mason safe." "And then?" I asked. "The river, the snowmobile, the empty urn. Do you remember what you left behind? Or did you only practice the part where you're the tragic hero?" A muscle jumped in his jaw. He bowed his head for a moment, as if listening to a voice only he could hear. "I remember everything," he whispered. "I tried to pay it all back. I changed my name. I cut ties. I woke up every morning to the wrong ceiling and told myself this was the price." "And yet you found time for Camilla," I said, the name cutting cleanly. He closed his eyes. "Later," he said. "I met her later. She doesn't know." I let the silence make him squirm, let him feel even a fraction of the waiting I had done. The piano wandered to a minor key. Somewhere, a glass cracked against a bar rail and didn't break. "Here's what's going to happen," I said at last, my voice the calm before a storm. "Tomorrow morning, we will sit in a place with windows and daylight. You will look your son in the eye. You will not make promises you can't keep. You will tell him enough to be honest, and not enough to scar him. If you fail at any of that, this experiment ends. Do you understand?" He nodded quickly, relief and terror warring in his face. "Yes." 11 in the morning, I said. "Hotel Cafe. You will be on time." "I will," he said. And for the first time that day, his voice carried something that sounded like truth instead of strategy. "Good," I said, rising, "because this time, I'm the one who decides what survival looks like." I left him there under the warm lamps and the soft music, his hands cradled around a glass he didn't drink from. The corridor back to the elevators felt longer than it had before. When the doors slid open, my reflection stared back at me. A woman rebuilt, seams visible only to those who knew where to look. In the room, Mason had fallen asleep with the TV's ocean screensaver washing blue light over his face. I turned it off, climbed into bed beside him, and listened to the real ocean breathing through the night. Tomorrow, I had promised a meeting. Tomorrow, we would step into daylight with a man who had chosen darkness. I let the tide inside my chest rise and fall until sleep finally found me, not gentle, but solid. Somewhere below that, like a current I didn't dare name, hope moved. Thin, stubborn, dangerous. Morning was coming. The cafe smelled of coffee and syrup, the kind of place that should have been safe, ordinary. Mason sat beside me, legs swinging under his chair, his eyes darting around nervously. Ryan was already waiting at a corner table, drumming his fingers against the wood as though the seconds were heavier than he could carry. When Mason spotted him, he froze. His little body stiffened. His lips parted like he wanted to ask, but was too afraid. "Mum?" he whispered. "Is that him?" I nodded, my throat tightening. "Yes, honey, that's your dad." Mason walked forward slowly, each step deliberate, as if he were testing the ground for cracks. Ryan rose quickly and dropped to his knees. His voice trembled. "Hey, champ. It's me, Dad." Mason's chin quivered. "But you were gone?" Ryan bowed his head. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you. I thought disappearing was the only way. But all I did was hurt you." For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Mason stepped closer and gave him the smallest, shakiest hug. Ryan folded him into his arms, as if holding on to life itself. His shoulders shook. I turned away, blinking against the sting in my eyes. No matter what Ryan had done to me, Mason had just been handed back a missing piece of his heart. They sat down together. Ryan ordered hotcakes and orange juice for Mason, coffee for himself. I didn't order anything. I only watched. Mason's questions tumbled out. "Where were you? Why didn't you call? What were you doing?" Ryan answered carefully, weaving truths but leaving out the poison. He admitted mistakes, spoke of long trips, of trying to fix what he had broken. At one point, Mason's voice dropped. "Did you miss me?" Ryan's throat bobbed. "More than anything in the world." And that was enough. Mason's smile unfurled, timid at first, then wide, luminous. The kind of smile I thought had been buried with his childhood. He chatted about school, about soccer, about the sandcastle he'd built yesterday. Ryan listened, as if every word was gold. When breakfast ended, Mason reached for his father's hand. "Can you come to the beach with us today? Please?" Ryan looked at me, silent, asking permission without words. "Just for today," I said. The three of us walked down to the water's edge. For an hour, it almost felt normal. A father and son building castles side by side, laughing when the tide devoured them. I stood apart, torn down the middle, joy for Mason, grief for myself, fury for the years stolen. When it was time to leave, Mason clung to him. "Can we see you tomorrow too?" Ryan's eyes flicked to mine. "We'll see, champ, one step at a time." On the walk back, Mason's voice was bright with hope. "Mum, maybe he can come home with us. Maybe we can be like before." I didn't answer, because I didn't know. That night, after Mason had fallen asleep clutching his stuffed animal, I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and stepped onto the balcony. The ocean breathed steadily in the distance, calm, endless. Mason's laughter from the beach replayed in my mind, a sound I hadn't heard in years. And then there was a knock. Ryan stood at the glass door. I hesitated, then let him in. "It's incredible," he said softly. "Mason, he's wonderful." "He had to be," I replied, my voice flat. "He only had me." He looked down. "I know. I'm sorry. I can't give those years back, but I want to be here now." "You can't just show up and pretend nothing happened," I snapped. "You faked your death. You abandoned us. You broke everything we were." "I'm not asking you to love me again," he said, his voice raw. "I know I don't deserve that. I just want to be his father, even if it's one step at a time, day by day. Let me earn it." I studied him. He wasn't the man I had married, nor the stranger from the bar. He was something in between, a reflection, a ruin, a question still unanswered. "If you're going to be in his life," I said finally, "it's on my terms. You'll call before you visit. No surprises. You won't promise him things you can't give. And if you ever lie to him again, you disappear for good." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I swear. I won't ruin it again." I turned back to the sea, the wind stinging my face like a warning. "I'm not the woman you left. I rebuilt myself without you, piece by piece." "You did it well," he said quietly. "You're stronger than ever." "I had to be," I replied. "You made it necessary." Silence filled the room, heavy, but true. At last he left, closing the balcony door softly behind him. I stayed there, staring at the waves until I realized tears were streaming down my face. This wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't even an ending. It was the truth, raw and unfinished. And for the first time in 3 years, that was enough. Morning light spilled through the curtains, painting the room in pale gold. Mason stirred, rubbing his eyes, hair sticking up in every direction. He stretched, yawning, then blinked at me. "Mom," he mumbled, "are we happy now?" The question landed heavy. He was too young to carry the weight of happiness on his shoulders, but life had forced it on him anyway. I smoothed his hair back and smiled faintly. "Yes, honey, we're happy, and we're going to be okay." For the first time in 3 years, the words didn't taste like a lie. That day, Ryan kept his promise. He didn't push, didn't barge in. He called first. Mason answered, his little voice bright with excitement, and I watched the light in his eyes bloom again. They spoke about nothing and everything: school lunches, cartoons, the size of yesterday's sandcastle. For Mason, it was magic. For me, it was proof that doors, once locked, could be opened again. But only on my terms. In the days that followed, we saw Ryan here and there. Breakfasts, walks by the shore, afternoons where he and Mason kicked a ball until the sun dipped low. Each time, Ryan kept his distance with me, careful not to overstep. And each time I watched Mason's laughter return a little stronger, like a song rediscovered. But nights were mine. When Mason slept, I would step out onto the balcony, tea cooling in my hands, and watch the endless waves. Out there, beyond the horizon, were the years Ryan had stolen from us. Years I could never claw back. I didn't forgive him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I couldn't deny what I saw in Mason's face. That boy needed his father. Not the myth I had kept alive with bedtime stories, but the real man. Flawed, broken, still learning how to stand. One evening, Ryan came to the door. He didn't ask to come inside. He stood in the hallway, shoulders hunched, eyes searching mine. "Juliet," he said quietly, "I know I can't undo what I did, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. For Mason. For you, if you'll let me. I won't ask for more than what you give." I studied him, searching for cracks in his resolve. But what I saw wasn't the confident man who once charmed boardrooms, nor the ghost I had buried in my heart. What I saw was a man stripped of everything but the truth. "You'll earn your place day by day," I told him. "And the moment you falter, the moment you lie, you vanish. Forever." "I understand," he said. His voice was steady this time. He left with a quiet nod. I closed the door, my back pressed to the wood, breathing hard. This wasn't reconciliation. This wasn't love rekindled. It was something more fragile, more dangerous. The beginning of a new balance. Later, I slipped into bed beside Mason. He rolled over in his sleep, his hand clutching mine. His breathing was even, peaceful. For 3 years, I had lived in ruins. But now, as the waves whispered outside, I realized something. We weren't rebuilding the old life. That was gone. We were building something new, jagged, uncertain, but ours. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't just say we were happy. I believed it.